One of the biggest points established through the latter half of the 5 Kage summit would be Sasuke and Naruto's relationship now being much closer to equals due to Sasuke's power growth, despite him being implied to be weaker than Sage Naruto following his fight with B, which is elaborated on by the back cover of volume 45, which notes how Naruto and Sasuke both have ever increasing power. So it's kind of just that Naruto's power would be growing through the pain arc with his mastery of Senjutsu, and Sasuke's would be doing the same through the Kage summit via his hatred physically amplifying his chakra and gaining more mastery over his Mangekyo Sharingan. So since I just discussed Pain versus Sasuke, I figured why not follow up with a Sage Naruto versus the 5 Kage summit video. But to begin with a section of just how strong Sage Naruto actually is and how his abilities differ from Sasuke's, the first thing to establish is that Naruto is certainly beyond the Sannin tier by this point, which can be evidenced by a few different ways. First would be the notorious statement of how Fukasaku states that Naruto just surpassed his predecessors, with Tsunade seeing a silhouette of Jiraiya and Minato behind Naruto. And kind of connecting both of these isn't really that easy, as Tsunade picturing Jiraiya and Minato could be in the manner that they protected her or the village rather than just directly power related, and we don't have any idea how much Tsunade knows about Hokage Minato's powers, or even some of these, like late more powerful Jiraiya's power. However, Fukasaku's statement is much more concrete and nuanced, as while it could be in reference to just Senjutsu or combat, it's still quite irrelevant, as it would just be from the time that when they learned Sage Mode, and we are made aware that Jiraiya seems to be training his Sage Mode, or at least using it out Mount Miyaboku as displayed in flashbacks like these. However, saying Naruto is physically stronger than Jiraiya should also just be consistent when you note how Jiraiya did perform well against Pain. He was clearly outmatched though, which would have done, and he would have done much worse if Pain was actually going all out, as we know that he was at least holding back when Jiraiya hardens his resolve to kick Pain in the eyes, which would just be the human path not expecting that due to how much weaker Jiraiya was prior in base, which is consistent with how the databook description stating that it dramatically increases your ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu, which just isn't something to even discredit Pain, as he not only reacts to Sage Jiraiya, right after this with his back turned and eyes closed, but also just reacts to Jiraiya's fastest Sage Mode attack, being his Kabari Senbon, which is basically Jiraiya's hair being hardened and fired out like needles, with Ma and Pa amplifying the hair to make them, more powerful. Coupled with how it can fire nearly infinite needles, it is the fastest Sage Mode attack for Jiraiya. And the reason why I specify for Jiraiya, despite the databook's wording, would just be that the databook, or the third databook, only covers up to chapter 402, and Jiraiya is the only listed Sage Mode user at this time. And even with this high praise for Kabari Senbon, Pain not only reacted to it casually with the Panda summon, but Jiraiya actually stops firing despite the amount of needles being nearly infinite, implying that he didn't think he could ever penetrate this Panda, which it also does just kind of look like a rock, but I digress. This animal path is also a talking point for Jiraiya, as they will commonly use Jiraiya kicking the animal path in the chest. However, this shouldn't be this should just be credited to him being like midair and incapable of changing his trajectory, and just also being halfway through his summoning. So when you contextualize the fight as a whole, you'll notice that Pain is just faster than Jiraiya throughout the entire fight, and is likely just stronger as well, seeing as the Ashura path can rip off Jiraiya's arm, and the Preta path is capable of literally catching and briefly holding Jiraiya's strongest attack, being his Big Ball or Sengon, prior to absorbing it. However, against Naruto, the exact same path got literally one shot and obliterated by Naruto's C rank Frog Kata when they moved on pace, yet Naruto was able to utilize the nature energy to transform it into a part of his body, one tapping this same path, just showing the caliber difference between Sage Naruto and Sage Jiraiya, which also just gets a little more consistent a little later, in the fight when Pain tries to capitalize on Naruto's Sage Mode running out, and he is capable of reacting to Sage Naruto's kick when it returns, but is heavily overpowered and kicked quite a far distance, which Naruto is able to capitalize on via throwing the Rasen Shuriken. So by all means, Naruto isn't, in the Sannin tier, really that close to, and should be considered far above the Sannin tier, as even Sage Jiraiya should be above the Sannin tier, as he states himself that he went from Prodigal 3 to Hermit Sage, just implying that the Sage Mode places him in a higher tier above his, base Sannin self. And whether you believe that Orochimaru is equals to base Jiraiya or Sage Jiraiya is irrelevant, seeing as Orochimaru is at least equals with one of them, and Sage Naruto is just above both of them, and hence Orochimaru as well. As for Tsunade, she is also just stated to kind of be equals to both of them, and she can also just like combo attack with the Raikage throughout the fight against Madara. And while many people think it's disingenuous to use her War Arc V tier, there is an argument to be made that Tsunade from the Pain Arc is likely very close to her War Arc variant, considering her 100 healing seal is actually maxed out in both arcs, as it kind of is implied to have like a top out limit, and she was only just recovering and eating from those 2 whole points in time. However, I think it's fair to say that Tsunade is stronger due to her Will of Fire, which could actually place Tsunade as the strongest Sannin, but without that, you were kind of just left with Tsunade also being equals to Jiraiya or Orochimaru, and if you think she's above both of them, then at least she's equals with Sage Jiraiya, which Naruto is also above. And yeah, so the Sannin are also just comparable to the 5 Kage in a few different ways, such as how Orochimaru fought equally with Old Man Hiruzen, who is stated to be the strongest of the 5 Kage, and 2 objective medians, and Kabuto, making the other Sannin also comparable to the top half of the Kage in individual strength, which is also just consistent with how Jiraiya is stated to have gained ninjutsu that basically scared even shinobi of all the other nations, which when you account for things like, you know, Sasuke's several power amps, such as his 3rd one where he's stated to be so different it doesn't even seem like Sasuke due to how the hatred is maturing and forcing his power to adapt, and then Naruto is implied to be equals with a later, stronger Sasuke after he gets another amp on top of that and the Susanoo upgrade to like his max out form that he actually opens up in EMS. So then that Naruto is basically equals and states that if they fought, they would die. And no, Naruto doesn't need KCM1 to fight Sasuke, or at least in the way you think, as the statement of him needing to master the Nine Tails would literally just be like a reference of him having to conquer that hatred to then advance to conquer Sasuke's hatred. The entire context to the scene in question is Naruto talking about how he relied on the Nine Tails power, which would result in the pain of a comrade such as Hinata or Sakura, and he concludes that he needs the same power to fight Sasuke, which will get elaborated on a little bit more in the next page, where he then thinks back to Minato stating that Naruto could master the Nine Tails, and I don't think anybody is going to further this and say that Naruto needed KCM2 to fight Sasuke, but rather he wants to control it, as he does state that he will conquer this whole control thing, meaning that Naruto is simply acknowledging that he wants to not only gain more power to battle Sasuke, to of course give him the advantage so they both don't die, but also to gain control over the hatred, so when he does gain the power, he doesn't harm any of his comrades as he previously did, and he could actually bring Sasuke back. Sasuke also corroborates this as well via him noting that he actually wants the EMS so he could eradicate Naruto, making both scenarios that each fighter wants more power to fight the other. So that's all. So Sage Naruto being above the Sannin tier, and the Sannin tier being around Hiruzen, who's the strongest Kage, and Sasuke being able to combat each Kage before getting further amped is pretty consistent where Sage Naruto is in comparison to even the strongest shinobi, the 5 Kage. So by all means, you know, he's not going into this fight on like a low tier, you know, or anything like that. He should be very well established against the 5 Kage. So beginning with the Raikage fight, it should already be established that since Sasuke was, you know, keeping up with him in V1 with his 3 Tomoe, and then even in version 2 with his MS and reaction speed prior to getting several fold stronger later, Naruto should also be able to keep up with the Raikage until the version 2, where his reaction speed is going to be much more pivotal, similarly to Sasuke, where the combat speed is basically out of the question, as even the Raikage states that no shinobi is faster than him since the 4th Hokage died, and that's only really a benchmark that Naruto achieves in his KCM1 form for Jonin Minato. So he probably isn't going to be giving him the hands, but rather just relying much more on his impressive reaction speed and his danger sense, and even that's actually even greater than KCM1 despite being slower in raw combat. So Naruto should just be able to keep up with and react to the Raikage throughout the entire fight, and even in version 2, as again Sasuke before getting 4 exponential amps was able to outpace the version 1 Raikage via his sheer movement speed and precognition granted by the Sharingan, which Naruto also has something similar to in the danger sense, as he basically does the exact same thing against the 3rd Raikage, who is actually considered to have an impenetrable shield as his V1 and an ultimate spear, yet Naruto's Rasengan went straight through it and cracked his arm after sensing and ducking under the Hell Stab. So Naruto could also just do something very similar to Sasuke to provoke the Raikage into his version 2 state, as he obviously is going to be faster than the version 1 Raikage, and can also just react to much faster speeds than that via his danger sense, and was able to even pierce the third Raikage's V1 cloak, which is described to be potentially even more impressive than A's V1 cloak, maybe not the V2, depending on how you interpret the same thing. And since C and Darui aid the Raikage through most of his fight in V1, Naruto won't have Taka, but will instead have Ma and Pa, who can just use like the frog song. However, that's only a last resort option, as they could likely only use it once, maybe twice through the entire summit, depending on its usage, just due to how it kind of is implied to tax their vocal cords. And considering how Ma and Pa keep up with Sage Mode Naruto and sheer combat speed, Pa actually might just be able to parry off Darui for at least a brief period, for while Naruto could at least maybe also just assist him via clones, which is just likely considering Naruto uses clones on several separate occasions through the pain fight to aid in things like his Rasen Shuriken. So Naruto could also utilize the clones to parry Darui off, as Darui isn't really any threat to Naruto, as he was able to casually beat up and overpower Pain in several occasions. Pain literally killed Kakashi, the strongest Leaf Jonin, as stated in both the first data book and fan book, and considering that the Leaf and Cloud have the same military power according to the data books, this should just lay out how even Naruto's Sage clones should beat up Darui, and especially C when paired with the help of Ma and Pa, with their usage of their combo attacks, like with the one they used to slice up the chameleon in half, when Ma at a really high speed, as noted by Pain, throws her tongue at a target which sprays a corrosive mucus to then wrap around the target, holding it, while Pa utilizes high pressure water style to then slice straight through it. And I mean, C isn't even really a combative shinobi either, and is more favored in realms like sensory and genjutsu, which just really won't be a problem for Naruto whatsoever, as his sensory is just demonstrably better, and he also has the strongest genjutsu. And I mean, C's only real sensory feat is just basic level sensory at best, and for genjutsu, I could see some impressive high ends. However, considering most Cloud shinobi can do this flash pillar in the war, and Sasuke's 3 Tomoe countered it pretty casually, so I definitely think that Naruto could as well, and could get put out of genjutsu via Ma and Pa, who could just practically break him out instantly, as they would probably just be riding on Naruto's shoulder, similar to Jiraiya. And even if they aren't, Paul could just jump over and save him if Kurama also just doesn't break him out, as he might not, considering their relationship here in the summit. And it is just really the Raikage versus Naruto at this point, and yeah, the fight is likely just very similar to the Naruto versus the third Raikage, if not better for Naruto, seeing as the Raikage, at least in this version, is verifiably stronger in the war arc despite the loss of an arm, due to how he can keep up with KCM1 Naruto in the war, and then is shown relative to Sasuke in the summit. Now this could just be chopped up to 3 things, the first being that A's chakra mixture may not be completely physical, seeing as his mental state is very prevalent here, being rather angry at Sasuke, and the other point I guess kind of just revolves around the version 1 cloak, right? So basically V1 or version 1 and then V2 or version 2 are simply fan-made terms for the level of chakra amplifying the Raikage's lightning cloak, and the threshold is reached and changed once so much chakra is inserted that his hair flares up. The idea of variable levels of chakra in this cloak is something to be noted, as we know that the Raikage is stated to get serious after chapter 461 according to the weekly chapter synopsis statement. So A's V1 cloak could just be in a lower form than the V1 in the war that probably could be much closer to a V2 that was keeping up with KCM1 Naruto. And lastly, we also just know that the Raikage lost an arm, and hence mass, so he would just be obviously faster, because the lighter you are, the faster you are. So the case for the Raikage just being slower in this fight in comparison to the war arc is certainly there, so Naruto should be able to, keep up with and react to him due to things like the frog kata that utilizes nature to transform the body, and widened, that could also just widen and increase the potency of an attack, or even his frog strike, a taijutsu move that literally negates durability. So Naruto has ways to fight A in his taijutsu style of battle, with his Rasengan and Rasen Shuriken being easy ways to get through the cloak. And I know many people do really like to hype up A, so if you really give him those like higher interpretations, Naruto should still be able to react and parry him off until Ma and Pa could use the frog song to then subdue him, which they can then just move on to the next room, as Naruto should at least just have the reaction speed beyond the KCM1 due to his danger sense, so he could at least perceive him as Sasuke did. Now, I mean, bro, if you really hate this idea, Pain is in contention for the strongest man in the Akatsuki through the Chapter 364 synopsis statement, and he's also just stated to be invincible in the third data book, which could imply a number of things. First being that before Sage Naruto appears, Pain is the strongest character in the series, or in context to everyone who could oppose Pain, he's invincible in comparison, which wouldn't include people like Obito and Itachi and anyone who's loyal to the Akatsuki, and hence Pain. Yet here's Naruto, who comes along after that data book, and he's blatantly proving that Pain's not invincible, so Naruto really just is in a higher tier of power than a majority of the cast by this point, so it's not really anything to dunk on the Raikage, but rather it's a thing to kind of hype up Naruto. So I definitely see Naruto and Co making it past the Raikage without the usage of Frog Song, though Naruto may run out of Sage Mode once, but since he'll have the clones at Mount Miyaboku storing Senjutsu, he should still be fine. Though Gaara does come along and save the Raikage, forcing Naruto to have to deal with the large-scale combo attack from Gaara, Kankuro, Tamari, and Darui, and it's actually kind of weird because Naruto doesn't have anything to defend against it on that level of a literal Susanoo, but he probably could just dodge it, as we know that he's faster than Sasuke by this point, and his danger sense would literally just be going through the roof at this attack as if it could harm him, so he could just exit the room by jumping through the roof, or just summon one of his large tone summons to either tank it or both. Like, I could see a situation where he kind of jumps through the roof and then quite literally drops a toad down on them. However, this would obviously be kind of out of character for Naruto, as it would just squish them all, but I mean, this whole thing's kind of out of character, so you can do what you will. Naruto should also just advance to Mei and Ohnoki. However, if Gaara were to take a more combative approach here against Naruto than he originally did with Sasuke, then Naruto should just be able to deal with him as well, as he can not only escape and use the same strategy Jiraiya used with Mr. Gamaken in the Rain Towers to advance to the room, while simultaneously destroying this summit room, as Sasuke tried to do originally, but also we have just established him to be very relative to the Raikage in speed, where Gaara simply isn't, despite him being able to intercept the V2 Raikage's leg drop. However, this should be credited to how A is likely just slower in the downward attack, such as when Suigetsu also intercepts a downward attack despite being slower than the Raikage, and we know that the Raikage doesn't believe that Gaara is faster than him after seeing, seen as, like, again, he states that Naruto, that he states to Naruto that he is the fastest shinobi alive at that time, which would also just place him above, like, Rasa, who could keep up with Gaara's sand if you subscribe to both fighters going all out. And I mean, if that's true, Naruto is verifiably above the Sani, whereas Rasa was killed by Orochimaru, so even if Naruto couldn't get through the sand defense for whatever reason, it's fine, as Gaara wouldn't be able to really catch or put down Naruto, and that's the goal here, to stop Naruto. And, he'd certainly just get dealt with something like a Rasen Shuriken or a Rasengan, even though, yeah, he is kind of formidable. Against Mei and Ohnoki, though, Naruto does face some problems with Ohnoki, not so much Mei, and while I would grant that Mei is underrated, she isn't beating Pain, and hence isn't beating Sage Naruto, as her only real showings by this point is pressing Sasuke, but this is clearly due to his fatigue setting in, as he was able to just clearly dodge her lava style and just his 3 Tomoe Sharingan at the beginning, but then opts out to just blocking her lava and Chojiro's hit with the Susanoo, as he then collapses right after, trying to up his Susanoo variant, showing just how drained Sasuke is, as he can't even go to any Susanoo variant outside of this little, ribcage form where he could just prior. However, similarly, Naruto could also just be getting the same region to heal him up as Sasuke did, though he probably won't need it as much as Sasuke. Outside of that, Mei doesn't really have anything, and whatever Mei does utilize, whether it be her high level water style or her lava style, Naruto could just sense it and hence dodge it, since Sasuke could in his 3 Tomoe, and Naruto is relative to a much stronger MS Sasuke, who stated to be not even the same Sasuke as before, and that's after the region as well. So I mean, bro, I really can't say too much. However, for Chojiro, I want to establish that him being KCM 1 level due to him performing better than a KCM 1 Naruto clone in the war is basically just dependent on several factors, the most notable probably being how Chojiro's mental state could have been aiding him to perform at such a high level, as the databook does imply that the source of his strength is his confidence in his own abilities, so it is pretty questionable how this would be translated back to the summit, where Sasuke was the clear superior to Chojiro, a superiority also aided by Chojiro's fear for Sasuke's reputation as a shinobi who took down Zabuza, meaning that Naruto should also share in that title, if not more, as the bridge is now named the Great Naruto Bridge, and should get dealt with kind of similarly to Darui and C via Naruto's clones. But although Mei and Chojuro didn't offer much of a problem, Ohnoki and Akatsuchi are quite different, seeing as Ohnoki is literally the strongest Kage by this point in the series, as he is established later to be able to react to speeds beyond the version 2 Raikage, as he does make his weight heavier mid-combat, showing just how fast his sheer reaction speed is, as he's moving beyond a speed much faster, I would say, than a V2, which is the Raikage's top speed. And then coupled with his flight speed being beyond Deidara's, it is pretty impressive. And while many people don't consider Deidara to be that strong, or at least strong in comparison to this Kage tier, his flight speed wasn't something ever really utilized much at all against Sasuke due to how his hot-headed nature was in play the entire fight, despite that aspect being his fastest speed, being even faster than his bomb's explosive velocities, as Akatsuchi could rise his mud golem faster than the bomb could explode, yet could barely perceive Deidara's flight speed, making this flight speed beyond the explosive velocities that were able to outspeed CM2 heavy Sasuke. So yeah, Deidara's scaling isn't really a valid point to claim that Ohnoki isn't that strong or is slow. Now, this is where we run into these same problems. I actually do think that Naruto does much better than Sasuke, and I mean, that should be a given. I mean, Sasuke nearly died, but Naruto has other things like his danger sense and shadow clone diversions, which are among Naruto's most pivotal strategies to off-guard an opponent. Like, he does it against like Kakuzu, Kurama, and even Pain, who could arguably be stronger than him at that point in the series. And these clones would just be, they kind of allow for Ohnoki to simply evaporate the targets while Naruto runs away. And since Ohnoki blatantly admits that he didn't have much interest in killing Sasuke at all and only really tried to kill him because everyone else wanted him dead, it's not like Ohnoki would chase him out of the room or anything, as he probably isn't that adamant. So I actually think stylistically, Naruto does really good against Ohnoki, just due to how he does these diversionary tactics and these kind of these trickery and whatnot against most opponents who are stronger than him. However, if he does stay and attempt to fight him, then that's it. Naruto's dead, video over. But for the sake of argument, we'll just be having him pass, which I also do think is consistent. As reiterated earlier, the last final ditch effort for Naruto to win would likely be something that he should save for Danzo, but obviously if he's going to die, then he could just clone and Rasengan barrage the whole meeting room as he did against Kurama. Although I think this would basically drain Naruto's Sage Mode, as there isn't anything to suggest that Naruto in the Pain arc could use that many Rasengan and Jutsu in general, as he notes that the Rasen Shuriken can only be utilized twice before it knocks him out of Sage Mode, and considering the barrage consists of nearly 25 Rasengan after the first Rasen Shuriken, and then another Rasen Shuriken after, and he's still in Sage Mode, kind of leads me to believe that on the basis that Naruto was sitting down and meditating, he was probably just gathering constant nature energy. This isn't even really talking what a Pain arc Sage Mode Naruto could demonstrably do, as that Naruto only used 5 Rasengan and a Rasen Shuriken among 2 clones before he was knocked out of Sage Mode. So it's pretty telling how Naruto couldn't do this, and if he did, it would likely just drain him not only out of all of his Senjutsu, but basically cost him the fight, as we'll discuss when we arrive to Danzo's section if he has to fight him in base. But yeah, if you're really skeptical, then you could just argue that Naruto will clone plus Rasengan barrage the meeting room and then head to Danzo in base. Although I don't see this as that likely, as Naruto just diverting Ohnoki and then running away after beating up Mei and Chojuro. However, keep in mind 2 things from this section going into Danzo's section, as Danzo does require his opponent to have a pretty impressive stamina just to keep up with the Izanagi. So note how Naruto got fully rejuvenated during the meeting room battle and could likely only use a small Rasengan barrage against Danzo going into this fight, and either 1 or 2 Rasen Shuriken depending on how you think he deals with Mei and Chojuro, Akatsuchi, and Ohnoki, as his expanding Rasengan would also work really well to just take them out. So yeah, I would say that Naruto passes and moves on to Danzo, but just note that conclusion for Naruto's moves going into this fight and how many he could actually use. Now, while many people are coming around to Danzo's side of the coin being potentially the strongest Kage out of the ones here due to him fighting the strongest Sasuke, I want to call that into question, as I have many times, because every time Danzo does well against Sasuke, it's only because he has an incredibly advantageous position and Sasuke is in an incredibly disadvantageous position, such as how when Sasuke burns Danzo alive with the Madarasu, resulting in him dropping out of the Susanoo again due to his fatigue setting in once again, where Danzo then just respawns behind him with a vacuum style jutsu prepped, which he immediately fires, and Sasuke simply survives it and then reacts right after via summoning his hawk, to which Danzo then tries to hurl another vacuum style attack when Sasuke is finishing his dialogue, but since Sasuke is now expecting Danzo and is looking at him, he just dove over the attack instead and then sliced through his entire body, as Danzo could only touch his neck 1 time, meaning that Danzo had to die 4 times to get 1 attack off. So this Naruto is much more comparable to a peak Sasuke, which yes is in the Danzo fight. However, it's after Sasuke unleashes the version 3 Susanoo equipped with the crossbow, as that point is another point where Sasuke's chakra is changing entirely, except in that instance it's actually changing so much that Karin can't believe it's the same Sasuke as before, and Obito confirms this to be power related, stating that his rage has matured and gained power and his body is merely responding to it, also resulting in a higher evolution of the Susanoo, making Sasuke then much stronger than his summit room self, whereas here against this early Danzo, he still has his fatigue setting in from after the fight, from the meeting room, from, you know, the point where Zetsu gave him chakra, obviously, meaning that Danzo would have to lose more lives fighting Naruto than this early Sasuke, and there's really nothing to actually substantiate Danzo's durability being impressive enough to tank a Rasengan, which Naruto could use well over 5, since he also uses a Rasen Shuriken, which could just be half of his Sage reserve, so he could potentially even utilize like 10 Rasengan if you equate the 5 to being half and the Rasen Shuriken being half, meaning that Danzo basically has no answer for everything Naruto can do. Naruto's stronger and faster than this early fight Sasuke, and his durability is highlighted to be one of his best attributes he gains in Sage mode, so Danzo doesn't possess any attack that could hit Naruto and bypass the danger sense, much less hurt him, which Naruto also just has other win cons as well, such as his clone diversions and Rasengan, but also he just has Ma and Pa's combo attack that they used on the Chameleon, as we talked about earlier, or he could always just summon like Gamma Bunta or Gamma Hero or Mr. Gamakin to literally crush Danzo, or maybe just to squish maybe 2 Danzo depending where he spawns at, as Minato kind of just drops Gamma Bunta on Kurama and it could actually hold him, and now they're outside and no longer in the building, so he actually can just summon these and drop him down. So yeah, Naruto should definitely beat up Danzo, and all in all, I think Naruto's performance at the summit is very telling for his ability, and I think he could certainly clear each stage and win. But that's the video. Please let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments below, as I tried to read them all and I am curious, what do you guys think? But even more importantly, over half you guys who watch my channel aren't subscribed, so please, if you do enjoy the content, then, you know, maybe subscribe. It helped me out a ton. You know, you clearly like the content, and yeah, whatever. I'm done babbling. Have a great day. God bless, and as always, love you guys.